Cain is woken up by loud cries for his name, interrupting his meditation. A child urgently reports that there are bad people in the mansion. Hearing that they've surrounded his grandfather, the man moves right away. By the village gates, several trespassers are blocked by Aiden. Approaching on his horse, Lando glared at the old man and confirmed that he's the one in charge. They looked at him with fearful eyes, wondering why they would come there. Around the horse were eerie mercenaries. The intruder raised a deed, saying he's come to take over the territory on behalf of his family. Stunned by the ridiculous claim, Aiden says the domain belongs to Bernatrayan, the mage. However, he died 16 years ago and supposedly signed the transfer of deed before passing. Horror and worry hit the villagers, but the old man demands that it be verified by a court. Indignant that he'd even dare to request one, the mage apprentice tries to attack. They raise their arms in fear, but Lando was stunned as a hand suddenly stopped his horse midair. Cain had arrived in time to stop the outrageousness. They had no idea how a single man was doing this, but he just balled his fist. Questioning where they found the courage to act so recklessly, he punches the horse and forcibly silences it in an instant. The mage manages to jump off just before his steed fell lifeless on the ground. Lando scowled and demanded to know who he was, but backed away instinctively as the towering man approached him. Cain tells Faye to take Aiden somewhere safe. Hearing his name, it becomes clear that the large man is the son of Byrne. However, he's also famous for being the legendary mage's magicless son. Wanting to teach the brute what it means to attack a mage apprentice, Lando takes his wand. Surprisingly, the sight of the tool pleases Cain as he's been wanting to see what magic looks like. Infuriated by his arrogance, the mage gathers his power and speaks an incantation. His first spell is a resounding flash, which sends a bolt of energy that hits the target right in the chest. The villagers cried out in worry as they watched the young man get sent crashing into the ground. Lando laughed in satisfaction, having made the power of magic clear to the brave commoners there. Standing triumphantly, he says this is the price for offending a mage. Faye screamed for his friend, but Cain suddenly spoke on the ground, saying he understood now. It was unbelievable. The attack was indeed painful, but the direct hit barely left a burn on his chest. His sheer tenacity was not normal, especially when he compares the spell to his own strength. Faye is glad to see that he's okay. Meanwhile, he's amazed that magic allows those with such weak bodies to produce so much power. His blasphemous words were enraging, so Lando aimed his wand to shoot another spell that would kill him. However, Cain was too fast and was already inches away from him. He was so fast that the young man did not even register the sight of his enemy's fist. One of the cloaked figures saw it, but it was too late and the punch had already connected. Lando's body is whipped back and his head is driven into the ground. The figure then tells him to stop and aims his palm at the brutish boy. A powerful blast of fire pierces through his body and sends him crashing hard into the stone wall. This time, the magicless boy seems to be done for, and his family believes this as well. On the other hand, the powerful mage rushes to heal the dying Lando. He screams at the men to bring the medical kit. After a while, the healing spell works and he starts gasping for air. The foolish apprentice's life was saved, but just barely. Aiden passes out from worry, unable to even look at Cain. He was still embedded in the wall, driven in from the sheer force of the spell. However, he was still alive and just amazed by the true power of magic. The veteran mage hears his words and is shocked that he's still alive. With this, he takes off his hood and gets serious against the boy who had power as vast as the sea hidden in his body. Cain falls to the ground and props himself up, willing his grandfather to wake up. Faye shakes Aiden awake, saying the young master was still alive. It was supposed to be a simple takeover of territory, but now extermination is necessary. Asked who he is, the mage introduces himself as Zaid and tells the boy to prepare for death. Cain's eyes opened wide, about to face the true measure of magic. With a loud scream, the master shoots a burst of flames at his enemy. It's the same spell as earlier, so the magicless boy just crossed his arms to defend himself. Defending with such a straightforward method was foolish and ridiculous. The torrent of flames hit his arms and sent him far back, so strong that he's pushed into the wall again. He takes it all, unwavering and unwilling to back down. After a huge explosion, they looked on expectantly and were shocked to see Cain's singed arms. However, these were the only parts damaged, and he stood perfectly, ready to take his turn to strike. The mortal was actually able to withstand the power of magic, but such arrogance was going to cause his death as Zaid shot even more flames. To his shock, the boy appeared above him, having already mastered his moves. The veteran casts a magic shield instinctively, blocking the purely physical kick that was aimed at his face. Cain stomps several times, questioning why he couldn't break through. Taking advantage of the situation, the old man gathers energy into his palms again and shoots a flash of blazing fire at the boy. Again, he's sent crashing into the wall, but now they aren't sure if the spell did the trick. For some reason, Zaid's cheek gets wounded. Cain, still smoldering, stands back up after getting a taste of a mage's true power. It should normally be impossible for mere muscles to reach such heights unless the rumors are true. Aiden tries to stop him from continuing and suggests surrendering the land. However, he insists that he's already found a way to defeat the enemy. He has eyes on some chains. Meanwhile, Lando calls to his teacher, saying he wants them all dead. For hurting the young apprentice, Zaid was going to make them pay with their lives. If the rumors are true, then he cannot let the muscle-headed boy live. Planning to rob him of the chance to cast a spell, Cain dashed forward and unleashed a barrage of endless punches. It was incomprehensible, but the mage raises a shield just in time. Both of them were intent on killing the other, but the mage was certain that brute force cannot break his barrier. The villagers cried out and cheered for their young master, willing him to defeat the invaders of their land. Zaid aims to end things for the boy, who's arrogant enough to believe he can win. Seeing the magic circle above his hand, Lando recognizes the secret magic and orders his teacher to kill Cain and all those that support him. Suddenly, chains flew toward him and wrapped around his neck. Before he could comprehend what was happening, he's pulled forward. Seeing his precious disciple fling, Zaid instinctively undoes his barrier to catch the boy's body. Unfortunately for him, this gives his enemy the opening he was looking for. He realizes his mistake, but it's too late as Cain drives his fist into the old man's gut. Surprisingly, the mage is still chanting, unwilling to fall to a commoner who can't even use magic. Having his own purpose, the boy takes the chain and wrapped it around the enemy's throat, completely interrupting the incarnation. As he can't afford to slack against such a powerful opponent, he tightens the chains to strangle the mage. Loud screams roared throughout the air, and Lando watched in horror as his teacher, a full-fledged elemental mage, nears death against the power of brute force. He orders the mortal to stop, warning that attacking a mage is grounds for clan extermination. Sick of all their threats, Cain pulled even tighter. Seeing this, the noble tells his mercenaries to help, but the villagers, who were much more in number, were prepared to fight back. Zaid's hand trembled and glowed as he begged for just a moment to cast his ultimate technique. However, the mortal couldn't care less about who or what they were. Given their actions, they must never have considered mercy or the retaliation from their victims. Like a man driven by insanity, Cain continued tugging. As a last-ditch effort, the mage casts a soul-locking wheel around his head. It glowed bright, slowly taking his life away as Zaid laughed in triumph. Again, Cain grit his teeth and powered through everything. Mercy was not an option from the start, and he pulls as hard as he can to finally end the old man's life. Lando, the mercenaries, and the villagers all stared in shock, their eyes and mouths wide open. The traces of the magic circle disappeared from the young man's neck, and he finally let go of his enemy's lifeless body. With this, he dubs himself the executioner of mages. Lando was frozen, unable to accept what happened, but the mercenaries immediately dropped their weapons. They raised their hands in surrender, saying they're just hired mercenaries. The noble says they're foolish to think that betrayal will absolve them from responsibility. They probably don't realize the gravity of the situation. It was all over, and everyone there was going to die, as the punishment for disrespecting the mages of the Magical Alliance was lethal. Finally understanding the situation, they stood frozen and turned to Cain for their next actions. Just then, a scout alerts them to someone approaching from far away. Everyone watched as a silhouette moved towards them steadily. It was a lone human riding on a horse. After a few moments, the steed arrived in the middle of the crowd, who waited in silence. A woman surveyed the situation, immediately seeing Zaid's dead body, the horse's corpse, and the noble on the ground. With a worried expression, she says she arrived a tad too late. Lando sees her and recognizes the emblem of Rain Academy on her chest. Realizing that she's also an apprentice mage, he asks her to save him. The air is tense, more so as she unmounted her horse to meet him. He gives her a rundown of the situation, including the impending punishment of the Alliance. Despite his promise of generous rewards, Aisha walks past him and into Cain's arms, worriedly asking about her fiancé's injuries. She's assured that the shallow wounds are nothing serious, but it's truly a pity that they'd injure him like this. That said, killing a mage is indeed a grave crime, so she suggests killing all witnesses and eloping to live as fugitives instead. The mercenaries are shocked by the merciless conclusion and immediately beg for their lives. Fortunately, Cain stops her, saying things haven't reached that point yet. He cannot endanger his people's lives then abandon them, and he can't involve her family in this matter either. She's moved by his sincerity. To work around the situation, he brings up the kingdom's upcoming mage apprentice exams. In a complete twist nobody expected, the magicless boy declares his intention to be a mage and settle the conflict in a duel. With this, the nature of conflict undoubtedly changes. But considering that he's never managed to use magic, it might be impossible. Even Lando believes that it's idiotic for the boy who's infamous for having no magical aptitude. Cain insists and shares that it's his childhood dream and the goal of his training. The declaration seems unfounded and silences everyone, but ESA believes in him with all her heart. Encouraged by her words, the other villagers also add on, cheering him on and screaming their faith in him. The outsiders looked on in disbelief, thinking that they've all gone mad to trust such far-fetched dreams. Moving on, the mercenaries are told to leave and take their employer with them. Lastly, they must tell the Mosin clan that he can kill a mage with his fists and can take a clan down as well. They carry the noble and loudly thank him for sparing their lives. Cain has no other option but to become a mage. He remembers his memories as a child. The other kids called him the child of a snake demon and mercilessly threw rocks at him. He took it all with a stoic gaze. But as soon as they mention and insult his mother, he lashes out in rage. One punch warns them against speaking ill of her, and he promises to smash their mouths flat. A few others manage to run away, saying the demon child was going to kill someone. He chased after them. From a young age, he carried the label of being the son of a snake demon, partly because his parents died after he was born. He asked his grandfather if this was all true, so Aiden refuted all the rumors, adding that his parents were extraordinary people. As for why they left him, perhaps they simply had no choice. One day, he encountered a peculiar mage from the east. He also called him the son of a snake demon. The monk calmly asks that he not be angry as he does not speak lies. What he says is all witness with his own eyes. In the east is Lyrian City, which is also known as the Mage capital, and at its center stood the majestic tower of Rifa. A snake demon was hidden underneath, and its offspring was in this region. Cain was losing his patience and argues that all of these are rumors in the end. He's then asked why a child of a genius mage like him cannot practice magic at all. If he is interested in his heritage, then he should try to explore it himself. The idea struck his heart back then, and since that moment, he finally understood one important thing. With Iza, he left the village. In a world where mages are revered, the only way to protect his loved ones, clarify his heritage, and roam freely in the world, he needs to become a mage first. After a while of traveling, they finally see their destination from afar. Lyrian City, the town formed around the Mage Academy. In this world, magic is omnipotent and determines the power structure and stability of the land. Mages are produced by 4 major schools, and now they are at the Lyrian Hate Academy. The mage exam is only held every 3 years, and the timing of his decision to become one was perfect. Most applicants have already mastered basic techniques, and there is no shortage of talent. Some even practice dark arts and wish to become mages to clear their identities. That said, the passing rate for apprentices is still very low as the standards of the exam are extremely strict. Of the 4 parts, the first is a written exam on magical knowledge. The proctor knows that there are weird candidates in every exam. For instance, Cain clearly had the physique suited for a knight. The young man suddenly looked right into his eyes and worried him by abruptly standing up. He asked what the examinee was doing, but he was just trying to hand in his accomplished paper. With this, he's told to wait for the results in the hall. Despite his appearance, he finished the test quite fast, so the proctor wonders how he fared. Later on, the school bell rang without any warning. Everyone headed to the wall of announcements as the bell signifies a record-breaking performance. The sacred glyph started to appear, and everyone looked up with hopeful hearts. In first place was Cain, who scored higher than anyone ever before. Everyone, including Isha, was shocked, but it was well within his expectations. To address his incompatibility with magic, he trained his body to its limits and read all magic books in the library. The other takers quickly resented him for arrogantly expecting results they can't even dream of. However, the words in their throats are choked down and replaced with congratulations as the large young man asked if they had something to say. With this, he heads to the second exam site right away. In the examiner's office, The chief, Yuji, calls the situation ironic. They came for the bell signifying a broken record, but the reality is disappointing as the top scorer was a muggle. Some feel that the exam has been long outdated, but the second test should weed the unworthy out. In the platform of trials, examinees are required to resist a formidable magic pressure. As the pressure increases, parts of a magic ring will light up, and forming a loop signifies a pass. Isha asks Kane if he already has a strategy for this part. He admits that he hasn't and will face it regardless. At the second sight test, the proctor orders him to halt. The boy presents his admission ticket, but the old man refuses to accept it and turns him away. They have no idea what's happening. Having proctored for 4 decades, one glance is enough to tell him that the examinee is magicless. Kane recites a specific regulation, saying eligibility is purely decided by the first exam's result. He's still rejected, and the old man says he dissuades many gamblers like him every year. Because they have mortal bodies and foolish minds, some die each year. The young man knows it's his duty to warn them. He reminds him that his power ends with reminders. Calling him a fool, the examiner asks if becoming a mage is worth dying. His question silences the others, but Kane simply replies that obstructing his test would result in criminal charges. The atmosphere intensified as the old man banged his hand on the table, saying he might not even be able to file a charge if he dies on the platform. Kane thanks him for the reminder and coldly proceeded forward. While the others silently watch him step up to the platform, the proctor is left with no choice, unable to talk to the stubborn boy. He was on the designated spot, and it was time to start the trial. As soon as the test commenced, Kane immediately felt the mana pressure pushing and pulling his body. It was indeed a powerful force penetrating and tearing through his organs and bone marrows. He's told to watch the magic circles beneath his feet. As each section lights up, the pressure will increase exponentially. If he regrets proceeding, now was his chance to back out and stop. Isha was filled with worry and asked how he was feeling. Flexing his muscles and tearing his clothes apart, he assures them that he's in excellent condition. The rings continued to light up one by one, and none of them could believe what was happening. It was impossible, but he was resisting purely with his physical body. Half the ring was already lit up, a feat no mortal has ever achieved. He grit his teeth and grunted through the pain. They ask again if he was still okay. And like before, Kane states that he was in excellent condition. Seeing the circle nearly complete, Isha starts cheering instead of worrying. Meanwhile, the other mages question how muscles could possibly resist magic. With another scream, the circle closes and he officially passes the test like a dream. It was an achievement unlike any before, but Kane asked to be hurriedly promoted as he wants to take the final test. They couldn't believe it. This stage increases the pressure until it surpasses the highest record and reaches the platform limit. Eska questions why he'd even want to continue with the pain, but he just tells them to stop talking nonsense and proceed with the test. As soon as the old proctor obliges, he's forced to hunch over from the overwhelming pressure mounting his body. Again, he screams through it and resists with pure physical strength. His resounding roar rings throughout the hall. Later on, a familiar bell also rings and is heard by the entire academy. Yuji turned in shock, questioning who triggered it again. Students and examinees gasped upon realizing that a record was broken again. Some think it might be a mistake, but they head to the announcement wall regardless. On the other hand, Isha asks her fiancé why he went so far despite his injuries. Kane apologizes for making her worry, but he knows his situation the best. As a muggle, earning the mage's acknowledgement is absurdly hard, so he has to prove it with the exam. From the very beginning, what he's challenging isn't just the apprentice test, but the entire set of rules and order of the mage world. She did not realize that he carried such a weight on his shoulders. Meanwhile, the other students saw that he broke another record consecutively. Yuji was furious with Alan, whom he warned against letting the boy pass. He apologizes to the chief examiner and says he's never seen anyone so desperate. Admitting a mortal would be blasphemous, and doing so might violate the sanctity of the examiner badge on his chest. However, the boy met all the criteria of their exam rules. Also, if he saw the state he left the trial platform in, then maybe he would understand why he could not arbitrarily take away the opportunity he worked so hard for. With sincere belief, he subjected himself to life-threatening injuries. Compared to his purity, conspiring in private to decide his future is too despicable. Yuji was indignant, but Ellen's creed stopped him from following orders, so he surrendered his badge. The chief examiner turned away in anger, refusing to take it. He was determined to stop the madness that was contaminating the apprentice exams. There was absolutely no way he was allowing it to continue. With this, he orders for all candidates to be informed that the third trial is determined to be a magical combat contest. In this method, duelists must use wands and defeat their opponents with magic. Winners continue to compete until the top 40 candidates pass and are admitted. Not caring about the protests, Yuji gives everyone half a day to prepare for the stage. There are a lot of unfair factors to it, including the part about bringing their own magic instrument. Meanwhile, Kane could already tell that he was being targeted, but he has to buy a wand. Fortunately, there are dozens of magical shops in the City of Magic. The Muggle nearly breaks a few instruments as he tries hard to conjure mana from it. Asia suggested going elsewhere, but he declined, saying he just wanted to confirm again. It seems he really can't activate magical instruments no matter how hard he tries. Just then, a bunch of people called out from the other end of the alley. The couple immediately turned. A bunch of shady men says they've come to the wrong place. They're the Broken Sky Gang, and they've mistakenly stumbled into their territory. It's a group of fallen knights and abandoned apprentices who've banded to form a criminal organization. In other words, they're small fries who are helping each other out. They look like a trio at first, but a couple more jumped in from high above. Kane catches an arrow that was shot towards Iza. The other gang members rushed in to attack, but a simple punch took them out in an instant. Another is eliminated as he launches the arrow he caught with his bare hand. A mage speaks an incantation and launches a fire blast at them, but he flatly swats the petty trick away like it's a fly. Worry starts to take over them, but a sneaky enemy manages to sneak up on the girl. However, he hasn't even landed yet when Kane catches his head mid-air. With overwhelming strength, he launches the sneaky man at the mage and takes both down. Capitalizing on the chance, the leader finds an opening to hit the young man with his hammer. He sure worries and cries out to her fiancé while the thug curses him for causing the loss of so many of his elites. Kane's body was hunched over from the hit to his head, but terrifyingly turned with a blank expression, his eyes boring into the enemy. As the man questioned the monster he was up against, he finds his head being bashed into the hard wall. In the first place, it was despicable to sneak up from behind. Kane assures Eska that he was fine, but notices that the enemy's mallet was turning his hand frozen. The ice spread from his fingertips and up to his shoulders. It was being caused by the weapon enchanted with ice magic. The gang member laughed at him, but the mortal just stared at it, intrigued that such magic instruments existed. The gang member says the frostbite will spread throughout his body and freeze his heart. Kane could feel this happening in real time, but instead of being worried, wonder and amazement filled his eyes. A quick flex of his muscles shatters the ice around his body, and the criminal simply could not believe his eyes. Aisha was worried for her fiancé and asked if the frostbite was ineffective. Smiling, he just says that he found a way to compete in the exam. The next day, the academy candidates gathered for the third trial of the admission exam, the Magic Combat Tournament. Regardless of their preparation, they're told to line up. Kane promised to do his best amid Issa's unending support. Meanwhile, his towering stature was now complemented with a large thing on his back. One candidate scoffs at the others and says they aren't in a place to compare sizes. His name is Defolk, also known as a genius youth with extraordinary strength. For this test, Yuji modified the rules and required combatants to use magic tools to attack. He was prepared to do anything to maintain the honor and prestige of the academy. The chief examiner is assured that they can legitimately end the boys' chances in the third stage. With this, the candidates are told to line up according to their draw number. The groupings are released soon enough, and passing highly depends on their luck in the matchup. A few murmurs argue, but their attention quickly turns to Group 35, which has a set of fighters incomparable to others. 176 is Mello, the genius heir of a mage family. 178 is Kita, a famous upstart. 170 is Looming, the magical girl. And 180 is Cyril, who is born from a special lineage. The competition in their group will be extremely intense, and they feel bad for 177. Little did they know that this was Kane, who broke 2 records already. The examiners believe they can get rid of him as long as they manipulate the draw accordingly. With this, the third exam begins. It's an entrance exam for magic apprentices, but most people already have basic knowledge, which only proves how competitive the entire admission process is. Sometime later, the matches for Group 35 finally comes and Mello is called first. Anticipation rose immediately as number 176 entered the arena. He's one of the most promising candidates and is said to have mastered 3 offensive spells already. It's an amazing feat for someone who isn't even an apprentice yet. His opponent for this round is Kane. The audience felt bad for him at first, but soon recognized the name of the man who broke 2 records in one day. They stared in disbelief as he didn't even look like a mage at all. In terms of physique, their bodies exaggeratedly contrast each other. That said, it's common belief that one's strength is inversely proportional to their physique. Mello makes the first move and takes out his wand, the Jade Heart. It's said to be a famous artifact from the Abyss of Extreme. On the other hand, they couldn't feel any fluctuations from his opponent at all. Told to get ready for the exam, Kane reveals an enormous black club and apologizes for his wand size. Mello's confidence wavered, and the audience stared in absolute shock and confusion. Yesterday, the Broken Sky Gang generously sponsored his tool. After a thorough beating, they provided all the equipment they had. They asked the blacksmith Ajax to melt and form them into a club, but he refused at first. Fortunately, a bag of coins from the gang seemed to change his mind without much resistance. The mage they fought was forced to squeeze out all his magic to enchant the forged club. Yuji is flabbergasted, having expected such tricks from the crafty examinee. Even the other candidates were protesting, saying a blunt weapon is against the rules. Kane shuts them all up and tells everyone to watch closely. With a loud and resounding war cry, he causes the club to emit light from the handle. Soon enough, the mana travels throughout and coats the magical instrument. They indeed see it happen but are in disbelief. According to the rules, there are no restrictions on the weight and length of the wand. None of them could argue as he was indeed using frost magic like others. Kane makes a mental note to use it sparingly as usage is limited. Yuji was enraged and wanted to apply for his exam qualification to be revoked. Unfortunately, the boy was exploiting a loophole in the rules and they can't legally disqualify him. Anger should not cloud his judgment at this point as they still have a chance. After all, Mello's skill and background in the mage family was not one to be trifled with. To crush the barbarian, they were going to use a full-fledged mage, resulting in the complete victory of their philosophy. Due to Kane's unexpected wand, the battle is paused to allow the exam committee's discussion. Mello calls his opponent a fool for trying to compensate for his ineptitude with size. The essence of magic lies in using the rules of the world to win despite having a weaker body. His words are met with silence. Meanwhile, the other candidates praise the genius for seemingly trying to teach his enemy a lesson. Normally, it's true that magic has a natural advantage over brute force. As such, knights and rangers of the same level must submit to mages. Before they could discuss more, the committee announces the resumption of the battle. The bell dings and Mello immediately moves to cast a spell, but finds his body crushed flat by Kane's club in an instant. Everyone who spoke so confidently earlier looked on in shock, shaking as they watched the heavy wand be lifted from the genius' twitching body. The fight was over in the blink of an eye, and the mage didn't even stand a chance. The muggle apologizes, saying he doesn't underestimate his opponents at all. Leaving everyone horrified, he turns away and encourages the organizers to save the boy while they still can. With this, the victor of the match was announced. Aisha cheered for her fiancé with all her heart, while the others again could not believe what just happened. Similarly, the examiners watching from above were solemn as they tried to figure out how it turned out this way. One tries to blame Mello for being inexperienced and letting his guard down. However, it was no time to dwell on that now, as there were others in the death group. While the genius made a mistake, the others surely should finish the job well. At least they could only hope. Kane is called down by the referee, but he requests a guarding challenge. It's the only way to challenge the record as explained in the rulebook. It's been so long since anyone requested it, so the mage has to check the details himself. Most of those in the audience have no idea what he's talking about either, but one explains that he wants to stay in duel with all the competitors one by one. It reeked of arrogance, especially for someone who beat Mello with a surprise attack. However, Yuji was eager to agree as the boy was making trouble for himself. The highest record for this challenge is 17 wins, and he just has to beat this. Several jeer at him for being too arrogant and start to cheer as Kawaiti takes the stage as the first challenger. It was a great opportunity for the upstart to make a name for himself. Also believing that Mello put his guard down, he decides to be extremely cautious. He stands at the edge of the stage to keep a sufficient distance. An advantage of a mage lies in long-distance attacks, so he might have a better chance. However, Kane disappeared from his spot as soon as the match began. Like before, the mortal appeared above him with his club raised high, but Kita believes that his instant spell is faster. It is indeed, and his thunderbolt hits his target first. Despite this, the opponent's attack still connects, and the mage is sent crashing into the arena walls several meters away. Again, people are left speechless from the overwhelming display. Kaida was out cold, and his smashed body was driven into the concrete. Kane was satisfied with his strength control this time, as he didn't cause lifelong disability. The audience points out that he was clearly and directly hit by the Thunderbolt spell, but the outcome remained completely unchanged. Just like his offense, his defense was also overwhelming, and even Yuji had to acknowledge the freak of nature that he was. Isha cheered silently, as doing so loudly did not fit the atmosphere. Kita was carried out of the arena on a stretcher, and Lumi immediately surrendered, not even giving the match a chance to start. Sarlo also forfeited instantly, knowing he can pass the monster onto someone else. However, the results of the death group starts a wave of preemptive surrenders among the common candidates. The situation was quickly reported to the chief, and it was clear what was going to happen. Yuji turns to the organizer, who was so confident in his plan that was now failing. Trembling in worry, he says a trump card, Jia, was still lying in wait. He was disqualified in the last exam for killing a candidate and is as strong as a junior mage. If he and the muggle end up hurting each other, then it's much better for all of them. York's educational philosophy and tactics are praised. Still wanting to be on the cautious side, Yuji reveals a red pendant. It's a sea monster bone remnant able to trigger passive physical defense. Those who do great things are not bound by details, nor do they hesitate to employ all means. The wave of forfeitures continued, and Kane was about to beat the record without much effort, as nobody wanted to fight. Finally, one candidate accepts the challenge. Turning around, they see the opponent, and it's Jia as the examiners expected. Somehow, he had the red pendant around his neck. Saying he should be a warrior or a blacksmith, he gives Kane a chance to surrender. Like before, the comments are met with silence. The mage is already lifting his wand as he gives his opponent one last warning. Meanwhile, the other candidates recognize him as the one who killed several mages already. The match starts and, like clockwork, the muscle-headed fighter reaches his opponent in the blink of an eye. Jia is surprised by how fast he is, but the club is completely blocked by a magic shield. Everyone was surprised, even the caster, as he did not expect the pendant to actually be real. A magic barrier is a skill that can only be mastered by star-rank mages. With this, it was the sneaky mage's turn to attack, so he launches an inferno blast right at his opponent's face and in point-blank range. They wanted him to lose, but the sight was horrific this time around. GS smugly apologizes, saying he had no intention to take a life today. To his surprise, Kane walked amid the flames and stared right into his shocked eyes. Since he did something he didn't mean to do, he grabs the mage's arm and tells him to repent. The huge club came again, but so did the impenetrable magic barrier. The shield allows him to pull his hand away, and he's perfectly encased in the pendant's power. Something didn't feel right, and the artifact actually felt unnaturally powerful. Jia shoots an inferno blast again, and like before, it hits the target squarely in the chest. This manages to get him some distance. Meanwhile, the audience struggled to accept that the boy who wasn't even an apprentice yet was casting highly complex spells. He had to end the battle fast. He has to enter the academy and learn the secrets of spirituality before his body collapses. Unfortunately, his opponent wasn't going to let him do this so easily. Kane calls his magic superficial and much weaker than Zaid's, who he killed bare-handed. They're dumbfounded that he was still alive and note that he just admitted to killing a mage before. Eska cries out, telling him to be careful. With a sinister smile, he says he's already figured out a way to beat the enemy. York tries to understand what he did to survive 2 high-level spells in a row. However, Yuji already knew. He doesn't have any defensive techniques and was purely using his body as a shield. Losing control of his patience, Jia attacks to take his opponent's life and sends a burst of dark flames forward. The audience gasps, surprised by the unexpected casting of black magic. From the impact alone, he was sure that he had finally won the battle. However, Kane appeared behind him in an instant, saying his anger is his flaw. Putting his hand over the shady candidate's mouth and nose, he supposes that he must be using an artifact which he felt when he first gripped his wrist earlier. Jia struggles to breathe, completely caught and unable to trigger his shield. Meanwhile, the onlookers can't believe that not even black magic could stop him. Again, Yuji is forced to acknowledge his skill, particularly in accurate decision-making. The user of black magic suffocates and passes out soon enough. Satisfied with his work, Kane lets go and tells the medics to handle him. The referee watched as he walked away and declared him the victor. His wide and sturdy back cast a shadow on everyone as their worldviews began to collapse in utter disbelief of his sheer power. After this match, no one dared to compete and accept the challenge. In other words, the Muggle won the accolades of the third and final trial. The audience was completely numb, and Isha just silently pumped her fists in delight. Kane is called to enter the chief examiner's office. There, he personally faces Yuji for the first time. The old mage commends him for triggering the Bell of Wisdom 3 times. The young man counters, praising the organizer's luck in drawing for the matches. Observing him silently, the chief soon gets to the point and notes his history of killing Zaid, which is why he's in the exam. As expected, the information channels of mages are quite pervasive. Yuji promises to use his influence to settle the dispute regarding the mage's death. There was obviously a condition, and Kane was willing to hear it out. He's told to withdraw his admission. The chief knows he's the successor of Byrne, but since he's unsuitable to be a mage, he's even willing to write a recommendation letter for knighthood. The young man asks if knights have the authority to use the continental teleportation portal. Yuji is perplexed by the unexpected question. Unfortunately, the rules dictate that only mages are allowed to use the portals. As such, Kane declines the offer, saying his needs can only be met by becoming a mage. The chief finally loses his patience and questions how a Muggle could dream of being a mage. His personal opinion is swatted away, and the old man is reminded that only scores matter. The boy's insolence and stubbornness sends him over the edge. Since he has nothing else to say, Kane turned to leave. As for the third-rate family matter, he decides to handle it himself. Yuji is left alone and seething with rage by the insubordinate fool. Unwilling to let anyone ruin his academy's examinations, he screams and calls for the proctor. Brayley must spread the word that the fourth trial for the exam is going to be the Spirit Beast Hunter, which he'll personally oversee. The mage worries about using such a dangerous method, but there was no room for objections. Just like that, a lethal stage was set for the final test. Examinees need to venture into the eerie forest, seek out a spirit beast whose magic aura resonates with their own, and capture it as a familiar. As long as they bring it back to the academy and pass the inspection, they'll pass the exam as well. It was an outrageous stage that caused a huge uproar from the candidates, but Yuji reasons that they will be taught the right steps and will also be tested on learning ability. The key point to remember is that the deeper they go, the more dangerous it will be. If they stray too deep, even the academy's rescue team will not be responsible for them. Again, people erupt in protest, hearing that their safety can't even be guaranteed. However, they're told to give up on being mages if they can't even handle such levels of danger. This silences everyone, and the unwavering gaze between Yuji and Kane intensifies. The tutoring session was going to be held on the spot, so they're told to listen well. Even Isha notices that her fiancé is being targeted again. For now, he'll take it step by step and plan things out carefully. Early the next day, the fourth stage, Spirit Beast Hunter, soon began. As the fourth stage started, the examinees were told to return by sunset. A few grumble about the difficulty and couldn't even understand the abrupt tutorial earlier. On the other hand, Kane was still and silent. Met with Izza's warnings about the forest, he promises to do his very best. That said, the test was tricky and he had no idea where to start. A dark figure watched him from the trees and was elated as he didn't expect an opportunity to come so soon. On the other hand, Defek was relieved that he didn't fight the monstrous candidates in the previous stage. He managed to enter the last part with a decent score, and enchantment magic is something he mastered even as a young apprentice. Just then, he comes across Lumi and another test taker. With a smile, she suggests teaming up for this round. Considering the circumstances, doing so wasn't really going to benefit him. He was sure to pass, but she sweetens the deal by mentioning the title of top contender. However, he's skeptical as to why competitors would help him out. Their failure in the previous stage deters their chances, so they need his help to get a high score. Heading into the second tier of the forest for scores was dangerous, but Diffuk's situation was different. The test is clearly aimed against Kane, and as long as he's gone, he's sure to be at the top. However, he's created a history of passing in the most surprising way. Irked by the thought of it happening again, he accepts the proposal on the condition that he captures a familiar first. Meanwhile, the Muggle sneezed somewhere in the forest as people continued to talk about him. Suddenly, a bunch of shady figures leapt in from behind. Armed and dangerous, they surrounded Kane and first confirmed his identity. He questions who they are to dare act sneakily during the exams. They move into attack, but the gap between their strength becomes abundantly clear. A few swings eliminate the swordsman, so the mage uses an incantation and summons a bunch of roots from his staff. Sprouting from the ground, the thick greenery wrapped around the young man's legs, they quickly made their way up his body. Believing that he's incapacitated, the remaining men rushed in to impale him. They indeed make contact, but to their surprise, their target has caught their spears with his bare hands. The sight is enough to make them freeze, but this was a huge mistake as Cain unleashes his power at them. After taking the spearmen out, he frees himself from the roots with sheer power and curses them for attempting to commit murder in broad daylight. The mage was in absolute disbelief, not understanding how it was possible. Realizing that their information on the target was wrong, he tries to escape for now. However, Cain had no intention of letting him and took one of the spears. Pulling his arm back, he launches the weapon with his demonic strength and shoots it forward as if it were a light arrow. It sped forward and, catching up in no time, pierced right through the old man's chest. It continued to shoot through the trees, dragging the body along with it. Cain stares at his handiwork but catches himself and realizes that he didn't leave anyone alive and now has no idea who attacked him. He sees a pendant around one of the corpses' necks and wonders what the badge is for. Since the main priority is the exam, he stashes the badge and decides to ask Eska later on. Suddenly, he hears rustling from nearby. A second-tier horned fox monster was there, likely attracted by the smell of fresh flesh. It was a great opportunity to fulfill the conditions of the examination. He tries to remember the incantation they were taught and moves his hands around while making a bunch of silly sounds. The fox looked at him in absolute confusion, and the mocking tilt of its head made him feel insulted. Unfortunately, the little creature dared to growl at him. Smoke rises within the forest as Cain finishes roasting a familiar beast after his failed attempt of capturing a familiar. Defek thrust his hand forward and spoke the enchantment incantation. He makes a connection with an 8-legged louse, a second-tier beast. It squirmed and squealed as his power took over its body. The young man was elated, and now it was time to help his allies with their familiars. Meanwhile, a huge board-like monster was slammed to the ground, then another. Cain was smashing third-tier beasts in frustration as he can't tame anything with magic. He concludes that it won't work because their level of intelligence is too low for communication. His grandfather said that some powerful beasts are smart enough to bewitch human minds. It's currently impossible for him to communicate with other monsters in the forest, so the only option is to find a spirit beast intelligent enough to speak to him. Back in the campus, Yuji receives reports of a patrol team finding traces of a secret mage organization. Hearing about the group of rats that connive, he questions what they're doing there. Just then, another group of scouts reported new information. In the depths of the second tier were corpses of the intruders, including one belonging to a stellar mage. The chief was enraged that they would dare cause trouble in his examination arena. With this, he orders his men to tighten security and spread the word of the pest. The news vaguely reaches candidates, and Eska can't help but worry about her fiancé. As the afternoon came, the first examinee appeared, and they commended his fortitude for returning so fast. The beast he brought back was a Tier 1 mountain pheasant. Now, he has to show control over his familiar and will be given a score accordingly. People are jealous as the mage displays amazing control over the creature. Soon enough, other candidates started returning one by one, most of which were accompanied by a spirit beast. Of course, there were some who came back with injuries or empty-handed. At the same time, Cain was in the forest, grumbling as the environment was different from the map. It was damp and uncomfortable, and he was obviously lost already. To make things worse, there weren't any beasts to tame at all. He had to hurry as evening was approaching, but a dark silhouette approached from below. The sun was about to set indeed. It wasn't within the examiner's expectations for some to capture second-tier beasts. Isha was doing rounds, asking if anyone had seen her missing fiancé. Tfuk chimed in, saying they encountered Cain deep in the second tier of the forest. She quickly turned and asked where he went after. They saw him heading further into the mountains, and the chances of him returning were slim. She couldn't believe it. She refused to. Yuji orders an assistant to gather everyone. As the exam is about to end, the sun slowly hid under the land. Meanwhile, Hisha was still praying for her loved one's return. Defek smirked at her, knowing it was impossible and that he's certain of his position as the top contender. The contestants and spectators were gathered, and Yuji was about to end the exam when the ground beneath them suddenly shook. However, the panic and confusion multiplied as an ear-piercing alarm blared throughout the academy. It was the ghost-level disaster alarm signaling the invasion of a ghost-level beast. A white creature emerged from the ground, and the veteran mages quickly identified it as the Earth Dragon of the Mistwood Forest. It hates leaving its territory, so why was it attacking the academy grounds? Just then, they noticed the unbelievable figure sitting on its back. Defect couldn't believe his eyes as Cain smacks the dragon's back and tells it to kneel. To their surprise, the prompt made the beast follow and immediately lowered itself to the ground. The mortal smiles, glad that he made it just in time. His competitors and examiners all screamed in disbelief, more so when he smacks the dragon again, ordering it to sing a song, dance, and do a somersault for all to see. It hesitates for a moment, struck by the ridiculous order. To the spectators' surprise, it soon roared in a tune, wiggled its limbs in a dance, and rolled forward like a skilled acrobat. It became painfully clear that Cain made the ghost-level beast his familiar. Isha was just relieved and glad that he came back safe and sound. Night soon fell over the academy. Yuji called for a meeting among the examination committee to discuss Cain's performance. He insists that the boy used inappropriate methods to achieve his scores, and his last trial even resulted multiple injuries and damages to the hall. As such, he moves that they revoke the candidate's qualification and asks for their thoughts. It was quite an interesting story this year, especially for someone who rang the bell multiple times. In the end, the results do not align with the purpose of the examination. Just then, a familiar man stood up. The mage in charge of the written exam emphasizes the mortal's performance, which was exemplary. Yuji did not expect him to side with the boy, but Ellen takes the opportunity to pile on and notes Cain's outstanding display in the second stage. This time, York disagrees and argues that he exploited the third stage's loopholes. Discord grows as he moves to revoke the bells, which was made by the association itself. The chief silences them and says the mortal situation is at odds with the exam's objective. If the academy admits such an apprentice, they'll be an absolute laughingstock to others. Just then, someone questions the point of the exams if a meeting can decide the fate of a candidate. The headmaster stepped into the room, and everyone immediately stood up to pay their respects. Facing the chief examiner, the old man notes that he's recruited interesting apprentices this year. Stuttering but pushing through, Yuji manages to repeat his motion to dismiss Cain. It was utter nonsense, and he's called even more confused than the elder. Surprised, he requests to be enlightened and is asked what the most important thing for a mage is. It is the rules. If a candidate passes in accordance with the rules they set, then they must accept him. The matter has already reached the other academies and can no longer be suppressed privately. Yuji has no choice but to grit his teeth and obey. With this, the next move is to decide who the boy's mentor will be. The headmaster excuses himself and they all bid him farewell. There are distinctions between ordinary and inner disciples. Most newbies start as ordinary ones and reside in dorms as they accumulate credits. Meanwhile, inner apprentices receive direct instruction and reside in mage towers with their master. Rules say that the top contender or anyone who rings the bell immediately becomes an inner disciple. Despite being against it, Yuji asks the mages if anyone is willing to become Cain's master. They all avert their eyes and give petty excuses, unwilling to take the muggle in. He curses them despite feeling the same way. Just then, York speaks with a recommendation. The next day, the entrance ceremony of the Academy's 172nd class started. There were less than 20 people left. As it's the hardest exam in decades, heads quickly turned as an attention-grabbing student approached. Cain towered everyone as usual, and the common school robes didn't even fit. A few teachers asked them to wait as the ceremony was about to begin. Just then, someone called to the Muggle apprentice. A juryman walked to him and introduced himself as Enzo, his master assigned specifically by the Academy. They're surprised by the man's unexpected appearance, and Cain rushes to greet him politely. However, the master raises his hand to stop him. Honestly speaking, he does not want to take him on as his disciple as he isn't particularly fond of people as big as he is. Since he values rules, Enzo suggests sticking to them and proceeding with the personal test. Mages often have simple tests when selecting apprentices, mostly just as a formality. Cain apologizes for being ignorant to such customs and asks to be told his requirements. With this, the mage orders him to follow for now. They reached the training field where several dummy posts stood for target practice. He doesn't like the boy, but he doesn't particularly hate him either. As such, he just has to use magic inside him to ignite a post with fire elemental energy. In other words, the simplest form of a fireball spell. If he's able to do this, then Enzo will acknowledge him as his disciple. Several other students have come to watch. Kane repeats the task in his mind and agrees that it isn't too much. But how was a muggle going to overcome the challenge? The examinees are all shocked by what Enzo tells Kane, while Defek is clearly elated that he will have a chance to be this year's champion. Back in his office, Yuji celebrates as well since they can hit two birds with one stone and eliminate both Kane and Enzo. They secretly hate the teacher as he has been occupying a star-level mage tower with his half-broken body and has long been a thorn in the side of the upper levels. Since the upcoming assembly of the new Mage Tower Association is nearing, the teacher will eventually have to give up the tower whether or not he accepts Kane as his apprentice. The two enjoy watching their most hated student finally face trouble that will put him in his place. Meanwhile, Kane requests his teacher for time to prepare for the test. Enzo allows him to prepare and gives him a deadline until the next day before sunset. If he succeeds, he will accept him as his apprentice. But if not, he has to leave and withdraw from the examination. Kane agrees and discusses with Eska that he needs to venture into the Mistwood Forest. He doesn't have a solid plan yet, but he intends to try something inside the forest and asks the girl to wait for him. Esa volunteers to go with him, but he insists that he must face the challenge alone. He has to become a mage no matter what, and this might be his only chance to do so. Meanwhile, Yuji is surprised that Kane is heading back to the forest, calling the boy stubborn for always acting so unpredictably. Meanwhile, sitting in the middle of the academy is Enzo's mage tower. As the holder of a third-tier magic stone, he has one of the tallest towers, a symbol of his power and influence. His apprentices, Terry and Nini, admonish him for giving Kane an easy task, suggesting that he should have given the boy a difficult one to drive him out. Enzo scolds them for criticizing his methods and judgment. However, Terry points out that the number of apprentices will determine their participation in the mage meeting, and if the number exceeds 5, they will have to compete fiercely. The teacher tells them that they should simply do their best and prove themselves competent as his ments. Inside the Mistwood Forest, Kane reflects deeply on how he can produce his own internal magic to call forth the fire element and ignite the wooden pillars. This is his biggest challenge in the examination so far, as he has never cast a spell in his life, but he has thought of something that could help him gain the fire element within his body. Last night, Gia gave him a book about the Mistwood Forest, which could provide the information he needs. It was the mage's compensation for cheating in their last duel. He follows the map in the book and arrives at the fire cave. Meanwhile, Grand Magusuru receives a rare letter from a faraway place. He reads it, and to his surprise, a woman appears and asks if he still remembers their 7-year agreement. Meanwhile, Eska patiently waits for her fiancé as the sun begins to set. In his office, the chief examiner also wonders why the boy hasn't returned yet, thinking that he must have failed his test. Just then, the door to the office bursts open, followed by a panting examiner with bad news. Meanwhile, Enzo and the other students are shocked when they see Kane approaching, containing the fire element within his body, almost making him look like a monster. Slowly burning from the inside, he struggles to walk toward the training ground. The students begin to recognize him, as does Iza, who immediately cries out in panic upon seeing him. Enzo tells her not to approach the boy since the aura of the fire core within him is so strong, and provoking him in his unstable state would be dangerous. Kane continues to be consumed by the fire element. He was warned by the blacksmith not to swallow the fire core as it is only meant for forging. Seeing the boy, Enzo realizes that he must have swallowed the fire core. The onlookers can't believe their eyes as Kane is so determined to use the magic within him to ignite the wooden stakes. Enzo watches as the muggle raises his flaming fist and strikes the wooden stake using fire core magic. The wooden stake begins to crackle and catch fire. The bystanders are all shocked when the stake ignites with fire magic since the muggle made the impossible possible. Kane drops to the ground after completing his test. The teacher then quickly injects mana into his body to stop him from exploding. He frantically orders Terry to go to the infirmary and inform the healer about the situation. Eska quickly rushes to his side and asks the teacher about his condition. Enzo replies that he is holding on but is in critical condition, warning her that he might explode. He then orders Nini to tidy up a room in the dormitory for the Mage Tower. Meanwhile, Yuji closes the curtain in his office, acknowledging that there is nothing he can do to stop Kane from becoming the top student at their academy. He contemplates that maybe the principles he has held on to aren't perfect after all. While going back to their quarters, York tells his subordinate to bring a potion to help Kane soothe his burns. Now that they know how powerful the boy is, they shouldn't continue to be on his bad side. On the other end, the headmaster is talking to someone saying that the Ironwood Academy is destined to win the audition, so they must train their students well if they want to beat them. With this, the apprentice test has finally come to an end. 2 days later, Kane finally regains consciousness. He is greeted by Nini, who explains that he is in his dorm room. He gently looks to his side and sees Isha sleeping deeply beside him while holding his hand. Terry tells him that ESA has stayed up for 2 nights in a row taking care of him. She then congratulates him for passing the test and becoming the 5th disciple of Enzo. The 2 apprentices formally introduce themselves as Nini, the 2nd apprentice, and Terry, the 4th apprentice. Terry then tells him to go see their teacher. However, the door suddenly bursts open, revealing a man who seems to have an air of indifference toward the muggle. Kane matches his energy and fires back at him for being rude, finding him arrogant. The man almost starts a fight, but Nini manages to stop him and introduces him as their senior brother, Aizen. He shows his rage at Kane for putting their teacher in trouble by seizing the apprentice spot in a troublesome way. Seeing that Kane doesn't seem to understand their situation, Terry explains that his appearance in their academy has clearly been exploited by some people who hold grudges against their teacher, because his spot will determine how they will participate in the year's Mage Tower competition. The Mage Tower competition, organized by the Mage Association, is a brutal contest among the 4 major academies to determine ownership of the Mage Towers. It is participated in by the apprentices of mages, and the results decide whether a tower will be promoted or demoted in rank. If an academy has fewer than 5 disciples, it is protected by certain regulations and can be exempted from the competition. However, with his recent inclusion in the team, their current situation has become extremely unfavorable. Still confused, Kane sees nothing wrong with their current situation, confident that they can win and bring glory to the academy and upgrade the Mage Tower. Aizen reprimands him for being so carefree, reiterating that he troubled the teacher and now they must protect the Mage Tower with all their might. The 2 start to clash, throwing each other insults and snide remarks. Aizen insists that the muggle put them in a bad spot. Kane calls him weak for pointing fingers and blaming him for something that isn't determined yet. Fed up, Aizen tries to attack the newbie once again but is stopped by the other apprentices. Terry reminds him that they have an apprentice code that states fighting is extremely forbidden inside the Mage Tower. So Aizen suggests that they duel officially outside the tower. Nini tries to intervene, insisting that they can't fight since Kane just recovered from serious injuries. However, the 2 are unstoppable and Kane accepts the challenge. SA gives him a worried look. Aizen tells him that he has 3 days to recover from his injuries, making it a fair fight for him, but at the same time wanting to kick him out of the tower. Nini calls him careless for accepting the duel, reminding him that he is someone with no magical talent. She reprimands him for underestimating the abilities of his seniors since defeating amateurs in the exams doesn't mean that he is stronger. Terry agrees and advises that he calm down and apologize to Aizen. Kane understands their sentiments but believes that the only way to resolve their differences is through combat. With this, Kane asks them to show him their power after being personally trained by Enzo. Nini tries to reason with him, but Terry stops her, saying that this is a perfect opportunity to show him their capabilities as Enzo's apprentices and demonstrate to him the true power of the mages and why they are revered. The 3 gather behind the academy. Terry steps up first and gets ready to attack, commenting that it's better to lose to her than be disabled by Aizen. On the sidelines, Isha is full of worry since her fiancé just woke up from a coma. Nini assures her that Terry will go easy on the boy. Kane guarantees her that he has recovered enough. Although his physique doesn't allow him to practice magic, but he has a secret about his body. Terry advances using Earthbind and tries to restrain her opponent. But to her surprise, Kane easily overpowers her, telling her that he could have easily ended her life if he wanted to. Teary-eyed, Terry freezes, unable to fight back, telling them to teach him all that they know. He reflects that since childhood, his extraordinary physique has always saved him from the brink of death. Nini tries to help Terry get up and cheer up, thinking that Kane must be that strong for Terry to lose her fighting spirit. After helping her, Nini goes on to approach their newbie to teach him what she knows. She comments that so far, all of the disciples defeated by Kane have made similar mistakes, and that is they have underestimated his speed and defense. She should not be arrogant and be prejudiced against the muggle. She then floats in the air, much to Kane's shock. She then whisks her wand and casts a magic wind spell and directs it at Kane. Aisha is surprised by her wind power, commenting that she has such a powerful attack. However, the muggle seems unfazed by the situation. Thinking that she has an advantage, she asks if he still wants to continue the duel. Cain apologizes and tells her that he refuses to win the fight without a real fight. Nini is confused by his statement. Seeing his unyielding confidence, he then grabs a rock and throws it toward Nini with brute force. She is stunned by his attack, which can be deadly if he intended it to be. After showing her his range, he tells her to get down so they can have a proper duel. However, Nini flies higher and covers some distance, enough that her wind blade can still be effective. To her shock, more rocks with incredible speed are thrown in her direction. She dodges the attack and tries to counterattack using her wind power. However, Cain has superhuman strength and he can jump higher than any normal human or mage. So he was able to reach Nini and bring her to the ground with him. Nini almost cries because of humiliation and confusion, but the Muggle thanks her for the lesson and a great session that benefited him. Aisha is relieved that everyone is okay and asks what Cain is writing about. He answers that he is jotting down everything that he has learned while practicing with the apprentices to find more ways to counter magic. The three girls are in awe watching Cain with such diligence. The two apprentices acknowledge that Cain is strong and ask why he possesses such superhuman strength. The Muggle answers that he doesn't know either and that he is also searching for answers. He doesn't really want to become a mage, but because the rules of the world are set by mages, he needs to become one while recognizing his own flaws, talents, and abilities, and improving himself. He will continue to move forward and overcome obstacles. With that, Cain earned the respect of the senior apprentices and officially began his journey as a junior apprentice. 3 days later, Terry is still worried about Cain and Aizen's duel. She asks Nini if they should go and stop the two. Having witnessed the junior's abilities, Nini is confident that Cain will be alright. Besides, the two boys need to work on their differences so they can effectively work as a team. Meanwhile, Cain and Isan face each other outside the Mage Tower. Isan tells him that should he lose, he will voluntarily need to leave Enzo's wing. Full of determination, Cain states that he won't lose and, of course, won't voluntarily leave. With this, the senior apprentice decides that he will force him out instead and gets pumped up for their duel. Raising his wand, Aizen states that he understands why Cain wants to become a mage and knows about his tough journey. However, as the chief apprentice of their teacher, he can't just stand and watch him put their team in danger in the upcoming mage tournament. Cain cuts him off, telling him that he knows Aizen is a competent mage since he is 33rd among the top 100 strongest mages in the academy. He may not be the best apprentice in the academy, but he can provide useful insight for Cain, and he asks to be struck with the apprentice's strongest attack. Triggered by his arrogance, Aizen vows to defeat him and make him experience death. He then casts an inscribed spell and hurls it toward Cain's direction. It was a perfect hit but seems too easy considering that his opponent has defeated other apprentices. Confused, he wonders if the Muggle just simply vanished and ran away, or if he got scared and forgot to dodge. He also contemplates if he was just too harsh and killed the Muggle on the spot. However, to his surprise, Cain rises from the ground, clearly injured but somehow still able to stand and analyze the attack he has made. The Muggle recognizes his power and tells him that he is indeed stronger than the other mages he encountered. He adds that the strength of his strike is as strong as his full power when he was 14. Aizen is surprised that he actually took an inscribed attack with his bare body and asks what kind of monster he is. The junior apprentice disregards his comment and asks that he be attacked by stronger spells without holding back his strength. With this, Aizen decides that he will give his all and fight his junior with respect. He then casts inscribed magic and activates earth prison magic. A tower of big boulders emerges from the ground, entrapping the Muggle under its force. Aizen casts another spell, Wind Rush, creating a strong tornado and hurling it toward Cain. Next, he produces a lightning bolt and strikes the boulder where Cain is trapped. The attack causes a loud and destructive explosion. As the dust settles, Aizen is shocked that Cain is still alive and emerges from his successive attacks. The Muggle points out that the mage's weakness is that he can do all the elemental spells, but he is a master of none. Aizen can't believe his very eyes after seeing how strong and resilient Cain's body is. He has attacked him with all the major spells he knows, but still, the Muggles survive. Cain attacks him, and he casts a shield spell just in time to protect himself. However, the Muggle still manages to see through his magic and break the spell. The senior apprentice can't believe that he easily broke through his barrier by using just his physical attack and ultimately defeats him. Seeing him so stunned after being defeated, Cain tells him that he simply has a stronger body than him. Unable to accept the humiliation, Aizen suggests that he kill him, but Kane refuses to do this since what they did was simply a match between two fellow students. Besides, if they fight each other to the death, they would lack a member for the Mage Tower tournament. Defeated, Aizen can't hold back his tears as he acknowledges that he lost to his junior. As Kane walks away, he realizes that maybe the junior apprentice can help with their teacher's deteriorating health. Aisha welcomes Kane after the fight. Seeing him alive and almost unscathed, Nini figures that the two men have already fixed their differences. She also informs him that the teacher is waiting for him in the study and he might meet someone interesting there as well, someone he might get along with. Later, Kane meets with Enzo, who comments that his body has recovered well. He then thanks the teacher for treating him. The teacher replies that he wasn't the one who healed his body and points to his third apprentice, Sinka. The girl looks at him and smiles, asking if he needs some healing for his wounds. Kane replies that he only has minor injuries, so he doesn't need treatment and thanks her for the help. She then inches closer to him and touches his body, commenting that it is peculiar and strong, asking that he give her some of his blood. Seeing her getting excited, Enzo tells Sinka to step outside for a while, since he needs to talk to his new apprentice. After the healer leaves them, the teacher comments that he seems to be getting along well with his classmates and then gives him notes and books that he can use to learn more about magic. Although he can't learn conventional spells because he is magicless, he needs to understand how magic flows in the world and use that knowledge to his advantage. Since he is quite gifted in strength, he should use that to maximize his potential. The books will help him gain common knowledge about the magic world, but the teacher adds that his guidance may be limited because of his unique situation. Despite this, Kane is grateful that the teacher is the first one to help him receive the status of a mage apprentice. He swears that he will repay the kindness one day. Enzo corrects him, saying that he doesn't need to thank him because he earned his status on his own. He is merely helping him as his teacher and because of his sincere heart. Ending their conversation, the teacher tells him to seek him or the other senior apprentices when he needs help or has questions. So the Muggle asks about the time when his teacher participated in the Battle of the Snow Demon Ridge 16 years ago. With a serious look on his face, Enzo asks if he is investigating his father's past, to which the apprentice confirms, saying that his father, Byrne, disappeared after the infamous battle 16 years ago. And just recently, he heard that his teacher also participated in that battle. Enzo admits that he participated in the battle but states that the information about it is inaccessible to the public except for the mages. Hearing this, Kane vows that he will become a mage as soon as possible. Later, he asks Eska the fastest way possible to become a mage. She sighs and tells him that according to her readings, one needs to earn credits through cultivation. When he receives enough credits, he can apply for the mage trial tasks. Basically, he needs to attend classes and participate in school activities, so he can earn enough credits. She also mentions that she has accumulated 82 credits, but that accompanying him has slowed down her progress a bit. However, it would take him around 1,000 credits to apply for a trial task to become a mage. She assures him that as a direct disciple, he can get more opportunities to gather the credits he needs. He then notices that many from different races are seen around their campus. Just then, a horned man with white hair approaches them along with his two companions. The man asks if Kane is the top apprentice of the academy, to which the boy confirms. The man then introduces himself as Sindar from Hemlock Academy, and he is looking forward to facing him in the upcoming Magic Tower tournament. The Magic Stone Crystal Core serves as the heart of a magic tower and is an essential component in refining magic and crafting magical items. However, high-level crystal cores are extremely rare resources. To manage their distribution among mages, the Mage Tower tournaments are held. To prevent teams from facing each other within the same academy during the preliminary rounds, invitations are extended to other academies for allocation matches. This year, Reinhardt Academy has 26 teams participating, all matched against those from Hemlock Magic Academy. Only the winning teams from the 16 matches will advance to the official tournament, where they will compete in the next stage against the 4 major academies. In their quarters, Aizen explains to Kane that only the victors from these 16 duels can move on to the main competition among the 4 great academies. He then shows the list of the 16 duels, each determined by a drawing of lots. That explains why those guys they encountered yesterday tried to provoke them. He tells his junior that he is the source of confidence in their team. Besides the preliminary matches, they need to win at least 2 more matches to secure their Tier 3 Magic Stone Tower. Getting invested about the tournament, Kane then asks about the rules of the competition. Aizen explains the rules for the preliminary rounds are straightforward. Each team has a crystal tower to defend. The core rule of the competition is to ensure the safety of your crystal tower while also destroying the opponent's crystal tower. Of course, each team will secure its crystal tower with various protective spells. At its essence, the competition tests magical skills and teamwork. He also adds that they should be cautious to avoid falling into the area outside the arena. Falling into the black abyss is connected to the teleportation arrays, and it will result in the immediate teleportation out of the field, leading to disqualification. Moreover, intentionally killing an opponent is strictly prohibited during the competition. Causing serious injury or death may also lead to the forfeiture of match results. Kane then asks if participating in the tournament can earn him credits. Aizen confirms this, explaining that they can also receive additional tasks assigned by their Mage Tower. When combined, winning a single match can yield up to 100 credits. With this, they should aim for the first place. The Magic Tower Arena was specially constructed for the Mage Tower competition, and the preliminary matches were about to begin. The participants entered a large gate according to the order indicated on their draw cards. They listened attentively as the instructors explained that each door corresponded to a separate battle arena. Aizen looked at his junior apprentices and told them to prepare for the start of the competition. In team battles, coordination and the ability to complement each member's unique traits were crucial. With that, each member reintroduced themselves to strengthen their teamwork. Nini, proficient in wind magic and long-range attacks, could control flight and block enemy strikes. Terry specialized in earth-binding spells and spiritual magic formations. Sinka excelled in healing, support, and potion brewing. She also enjoyed body modification and was skilled in close combat, possessing a unique shape-shifting ability. Aizen himself was adept at simulating various elemental attacks using runic magic, capable of both strong offense and solid defense. Finally, Kane, though lacking magical abilities, possessed extraordinary physical strength. The team entered the dungeon and quickly located their crystal tower. From their position, they could see where their opponents were stationed. When the tournament officially commenced, both teams stood on opposite sides of the arena. Cinder turned to his teammate Piero and said that they should give their opponents a little surprise. Piero then slammed his hands to the ground, channeling his magic to summon a stone golem warrior. Floating above with her wind magic, Nini warned her team that more enemies were approaching, summoned by their opponent's magic. With that, Aizen ordered his team to block the enemy's advance on the battlefield. He instructed Terry to stay back and charge the Crystal Tower's shield with her magic. Sindar let out an evil laugh, boasting that summoning magic was practically a cheat code in tournaments but undeniably effective in crushing opponents. He taunted Aizen's team to surrender voluntarily before they embarrassed themselves and were thrown out of the arena. As Cinder spoke, Kane calmly measured the distance between them in his head. Unbothered by the threats, he began stretching his arms and shoulders as if preparing for a casual warm-up rather than a battle. Then, without hesitation, he picked up a rock ready to start the fight. Cinder finds Kane odd and tells him to just surrender. However, the Muggle remains unfazed and prepares to throw a rock at his opponents instead. With sheer brute force, he hurls the rock, which shoots past the enemies at incredible speed. He has one target in mind, the Crystal Tower. Everyone is stunned when the rock smashes into the crystal with such force that it instantly shatters. In a blink, Cinder's team is eliminated and the Stormbreaker team wins. Even Kane's teammates are left speechless by his move, unsure whether to be impressed or terrified. Terry doesn't even realize they've already won since the fight ended so quickly. Kane, on the other hand, is simply satisfied that they earned 100 so easily. Meanwhile, Cinder is beyond enraged that they were defeated so effortlessly. Refusing to accept the outcome, Piero activates Stone Golem Fusion and attacks the Stormbreaker team, and completely violating the competition rules. Aizen immediately casts a shield to protect his teammates, while Kane steps forward and punches through the golem's hard exterior, shattering it with ease and sending it crashing to the ground. The opposing team is humiliated even further, their anger burning hotter. They rush to their injured teammate, and Kane instructs Senka to take charge. She approaches the fallen opponent and heals him to ensure their team isn't disqualified. The opposing team thanks her for saving their teammate's life. Back in their quarters, Aizen finally breathes a sigh of relief that their team wasn't disqualified. Kane promises to be more careful next time, but Terry points out that with his terrifying combat ability, they'll need to adjust their team strategy around his strength. Isha then comments, half-jokingly, that she's jealous because direct disciples like Kane can earn in a day what regular students like her struggle to earn in over 2 years. Kane smiles and promises to help her earn credits once the competition ends. After all, she's his fiancée. And so, the Stormbreaker team narrowly passes their first match unscathed. Unbeknownst to them, their victory is already stirring a storm of envy among others. In anger, Sindar slams his fist against the wall, cracking it. He can't accept the humiliation and demands that his fellow student, Molu, take a stand for their academy's honor. Molu reminds him that they represent the dignity of their entire institution and must not act recklessly. He has already investigated the situation and found that the problem began within their own team. Still, Cinder vows that in the next match, he will personally reclaim their academy's honor. The second round of the Mage Tower tournament takes place inside the Mage Tower dungeon. The rules are similar to first match. Protect their own crystal while destroying the opponent's. However, this time the central passage has been transformed into a complex maze. Hearing this, Kane realizes that a quick victory won't be as easy. He also hears rumors that the team originally scheduled to face them has suddenly forfeited. In their place, the Hemlock Magic Academy has sent another team in preparation to target him again. Determined not to cause unnecessary trouble again, Kane promises to be more careful this time. The Stormbreaker team begins to strategize. The dungeon has multiple entrances leading to the crystal chamber, and based on their pre-match analysis, they decide to focus on defense. Aizen assigns 3 people to guard the crystal while 2 will explore the maze to gather information. Since Kane possesses the strongest combat ability, he's chosen as one of the scouts. He's paired with Sinka, whose soul imprint works well in the dungeon's terrain. Meanwhile, in Hemlock Academy's crystal chamber, Cinder receives a report on the Stormbreaker's movements. His impatience flares since he doesn't just want to win, he wants to humiliate Kane's team and make them pay for their earlier disrespect. Back in the dungeon, Senka and Kane move cautiously through the misty corridors. While walking, Senka suddenly asks if he could give her some of his blood, and she'll exchange it for incredibly powerful potions. Her eyes gleam with excitement as she explains that there are potions that can enhance magic power, induce temporary death, alter magical attributes, even permanently change one's appearance, and that she only need about 400 milliliters of blood from him. Kane isn't particularly interested in potions, but since it's for his senior, he agrees without hesitation. Sinka beams at his response, but her expression quickly turns serious as a strange mist begins filling the chamber. Alarmed, she warns him to cover his mouth and nose. Out of the fog, a massive insect and 2 mages emerge. The Goblin Prince laughs maniacally, revealing that his mist can drain their magic abilities. Beside him stands Theo, the insect mage, known for raising soul-bound creatures inherited from his family line. Sinka urges Kane to retreat so they won't get trapped, but before she can react, Kane moves on his own. Without warning, he lunges forward and delivers a devastating punch toward the insect, instantly defeating its master. Schaefer's grin vanishes as Kane grabs his head and slams it into the ground with frightening force. Theo collapses, suffering soul damage from his beast's death. Before Kane can catch his breath, Nyx, another Hemlock mage, appears and restrains Sinka. Kane rushes to her aid, but it's too late as Nyx disappears into the maze, taking her hostage. Frustrated, Kane curses himself for lacking magic since he can't sense where she's been taken. Then suddenly, his enhanced hearing picks up her faint, ragged breathing somewhere beyond the walls. Without hesitation, he begins smashing through the stone passages one by one, following the sound. Meanwhile, Nyx tells the struggling Sinka to calm down, claiming he isn't breaking any tournament rules as long as he doesn't kill her. But his smugness doesn't last long since the wall beside him explodes open, revealing an enraged Kane. Without a word, Kane charges at Nyx. But before he can land a blow, a massive bear bursts into the chamber, roaring furiously. Nyx panics and tries to flee, but Kane blocks his escape, ready to face both threats head-on. The man is completely defeated after the attack. Senka returns to her human form and apologizes to Kane for almost putting them in danger. Just then, Nini appears visibly injured and urgently tells them that their crystal tower is under attack. Somehow, the opponent managed to surprise them and strike from behind. She urges them to follow her, but Kane stops Sinka and insists that he will go alone. Before leaving, he asks who injured Nini, but she dismisses his concern, saying it is nothing serious and that they must hurry. Suddenly, Kane punches Nini in the stomach, sending her crashing against the wall. Her disguise fades, revealing an unfamiliar woman. She is Yankee from Hemlock Academy, a specialist in illusion magic. Kane calls her move pathetic, saying that her trick was too obvious to fool him. Yankee laughs mockingly and traps him inside an illusion array, rendering him completely defenseless. Senka desperately tries to wake him, but he is already too deep in the illusion. Yankee touches his face, fascinated that someone so strong could be so helpless against mental magic. Overcome by curiosity, she decides to explore the depths of his mind and invades his consciousness, while Senka struggles to pull him out. Inside Kane's mind, Yankee finds herself standing before a towering structure that rises endlessly into the sky. Her awe quickly turns into terror as a giant snake appears and lunges toward her, ready to devour her whole. She screams and hastily breaks her own spell, gasping for breath as she escapes from Kane's consciousness. Trembling, she calls him a monster, horrified by what she witnessed within his mind. Kane finally wakes from the illusion. Senka checks if he is alright, though he still appears dazed and disoriented. At that moment, Cinder arrives and punishes Yankee on the spot, stepping on her and calling her weak and incompetent like the rest. Consumed by fury, Cinder declares that he will personally reclaim the dignity of Hemlock Academy. He leaps forward and attacks Kane, determined to show him the strength of the Academy's most powerful battle technique, the Holy Light Battle Fist. The punch connects, but to Cindar's shock, Kane remains standing, completely unharmed. Calmly, Kane tells him that someone who disrespects his comrades has no right to speak of dignity, then asks if that was truly his strongest strike. In response to Cindar's weak strike, Kane unleashes only half of his strength, yet the resulting punch sends his opponent crashing to the far end of the chamber. Kane despises anyone who disrespects their own comrades. After the clash, he turns to Senka and apologizes for causing her trouble once again. Meanwhile, inside the crystal chamber, the remaining members of Stormbreaker are astonished to learn that their team has triumphed over Hemlock Academy. Elsewhere, in his quarters, Malu receives the report that Hemlock Academy has been completely wiped out. With a sigh, he orders his servant to have the next group forfeit, remarking that although he would love to face Kane himself, now is not the time. Back in Stormbreaker's quarters, Enzo congratulates his apprentices for advancing to the top 16. He tells them that he is already proud of their achievement as they have met their goal. However, the team insists on continuing. They want to aim for the high-level Magic Tower Crystal Core and grab the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to earn more credits along the way. Enzo cautions them that battles beyond the top 16 will be far more dangerous. Yet, the team has already made up their minds. Each of them carries a personal reason to keep fighting. A flashback reveals that the 4 apprentices once knelt before their teacher, humbly asking for a favor. They reminded him of the great battle at Snow Devil Ridge 16 years ago, where Enzo cast a moonlight-level spell far beyond his rank. His actions saved countless mages' lives. And as a result, the Academy awarded him stewardship over the current 3rd-level Mage Tower. However, the battle came at a heavy price since his magical foundation was damaged, and his path to further advancement was cut off. Over time, his past achievements faded from memory. Some even ridiculed him in secret, calling him a crippled mage. Yet there remains a cure for Enzo's condition. If they win the Magic Tower tournament, they will be granted a Moonlight-level reward, one that might finally heal their teacher's injury. What once seemed like a distant dream now feels within reach. With Kane among them, victory no longer seems impossible. The apprentices ask Kane to lend them his strength. Smiling, Kane tells them that winning the tournament has been his goal from the beginning, so he will fight alongside them. And so, Kane and his team set out on their journey in the Magic Tower tournament, heading toward the Sacred Wood Plains of Fairstadt. Eska joins them as the team's manager, delighted that she can earn credits while traveling with them. Kane looks forward to this new chapter, which is his path toward becoming a full-fledged mage.
Alright, that's the end of the story. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.